Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right, folks. We're back with the Truth Attack. Okay, so we are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating. So, if you enjoy the shows, the information, the discussions, the lectures, the revelations, the guests and the hosts on the other shows on the network, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over to the libertyworksradionetwork.com and get signed up as a monthly subscribing member. We need the support of the broadcast listening audience to keep the network operating. So, find your way over to libertyworksradionetwork.com website and get signed up. And if you want to get fully informed on my favorite topic on this version of the Truth Attack Hour every Thursday at 6 o'clock on the Liberty Works Radio Network, broadcast live nationwide through the libertyworksnetwork.com website and the online listening radio link there that's on the site. So find your way over to taxfreedom.com and get educated on the income tax law, which has been maladministered since World War II by the IRS, the DOJ, and the lower courts. And that maladministration has been overturned by the Supreme Court. They're just not telling anyone about it, but it's all there at taxfreedom.com. Read it yourself. Decide for yourself who's telling you the truth and who's hiding the truth from you. And if you know anyone that needs help answering the IRS administrative correspondence or answering DOJ in court on tax issues, tell them to head on over to irszoom.com and you can get help there for answering IRS letters for just $30, $40, or $50 per letter. And you can get help answering the Department of Justice based on the Supreme Court's most recent decision that says the income tax is not the unlimited, non-apportioned, direct tax on all earnings that the IRS has been assessing, the DOJ has been arguing, and the lower courts have been allowing since 1955. It's all unconstitutional. It's all exposed. There's no question. It's irrefutable. No one will appear on the show to defend what's being done. No judge will enter into a discussion. No judge will address it in court. No attorney will enter into any discussion. They're all running away, hoping that by not talking about it, you won't learn about it. If you want to learn about it, all you got to do is go here and read the first two articles. It's all right there. It's all irrefutable. It links to the documents that the Supreme Court wrote and that the IRS and the DOJ have been using for 50 years to tell you you're a slave. You have no constitutional rights. You're a slave. You work, you owe. Everybody knows that. It's the 16th Amendment. Even though there's no authority in the amendment for Congress to write new law, which is a necessary element of subject matter jurisdiction being taken in the courts. The courts have to be able to show that Congress was constitutionally authorized to write law to enforce a power allegedly granted. And they can't do that when you argue a power under the 16th Amendment because there's no enabling enforcement clause in that amendment, as there is in all the other amendments where a new power was intended to be created that would be enforced against the American people. Go check it out. 16th Amendment is bereft of any grant of authority to Congress to write law. Therefore, nothing can be done in the federal courts under the 16th Amendment because the federal courts are only allowed to enforce constitutionally authorized law written by a constitutionally authorized Congress to write that law. And you can't establish subject matter jurisdiction without showing a constitutional authority being given to Congress to write law for the specific subject matter at issue in the courtroom. And there is none. So get educated. Okay, today we're going to take a break and talk about what's happening in America. Because, of course, the Democratic Party has gone absolutely insane. And the far extreme socialist communist element of the Democrat Party is taking over the inner city elections in the far left states, as we see in New York and in Michigan. Actual communists, anti-American, Jew-hating Nazis is the only way to describe it. Oh, let's forget Jew-hating Nazis, Muslims. And they're winning the elections, pushing communism and socialism. And Mamdani, of course, is embarking on that effort in New York. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the Democrats seem to be taking advantage of and yelling and screaming louder than the Republicans are on the other side about affordability, affordability, oh, affordability. These assholes, oh my God. The Democrats created the affordability crisis. This is their crisis. How they managed to successfully blame it on Trump and the Republicans is the wonder of the year. Joe Biden drove inflation to a high of 9.1%. It's now running down about 2.7, 3. So inflation has come way down, and it was lower. Of course, inflation is being driven by energy prices. Trump had energy all the way down to less than $2 a gallon, and he took the risk of trying to take out the Iranian terrorism and the 50 years of messing with world peace that they've been involved with. I think it was a good bet, and I support it. He did that knowing that the price of oil was going to go up and that it was going to be difficult to win midterms with a high price of oil. He gambled that he could get things done in Iran quickly enough so that the price of oil would come back down as a consequence of things being settled there. He tried to ensure that by first taking the Venezuelan oil so that U.S. could produce sufficient quantities to replace any diminishment or loss of oil coming out of Iran. He's been very effective at that. Right now, America is the largest producer of oil on the planet. They outproduce both Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. So he needs to get the price of oil back down because, of course, it's the price of gasoline and diesel fuel and energy that's driving prices everywhere. And, of course, inflation under Joe Biden is why everything became unaffordable. This didn't happen under Trump. The prices of food, gasoline, energy, your electric bill, your utility bill, well, they're bad in blue states because of blue state Democrat policy. As I said before, Trump had them under control, and now they've started to go back up again because they have to get the Iranian war settled. But the Democrats drove the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. I told you, across 4 years, you had a high of 9.1 inflation. The first thing he did on day one is cancel the oil pipelines, Joe Biden, and turn off the oil drilling, and that immediate effect drove oil and gasoline up through the roof. And that drove the price of everything, including all the food, the CPI. And then, of course, they piled on $1 trillion of infrastructure and nonsense COVID money distribution. And that printing of currency drove the inflation rate all the way to 9.1% at its highest rate. And the CPI rate increased 21.4%. The price of goods and services went up under Joe Biden 21.4%. That's where your lack of affordability came from, not Donald Trump, the Democrat policies. But somehow the socialists are yelling about affordability when they're the ones who caused the problem. And the Republicans aren't being very effective about pointing out you actually have a pretty good economy where wages are starting to catch up to the increases in goods and services that occurred under Biden, where our energy commitment is, as I said, higher than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined. And if they get the Iranian situation straightened out, oil will be back down 60, 65 a barrel, less than $2 a gallon across the whole United States, except in California, of course, where it will be, $5 still. But if the Democrats get back into power, they're going to go right back to their previous policies. They're going to turn off the drill, baby, drill. They're going to return off the fields. And they're going to drive the price of gasoline back to $6 and $10 in California. They're the cause of the affordability crisis. The Democrats did it all. They drove up the price of gasoline and diesel. That drove up the price of energy. That drove up the price of all services and all food, which is delivered by diesel truck. Along with the printing of money, it's the Democrats that created the affordability crisis. And what did they do with all that money that they printed? That's right, they used it to import a new voter bloc, 10 to 15 million illegal aliens, who they then prioritized in the budget spending, giving the foreign non-citizens housing priority, free health care, business loans, food stamps, hotel rooms, and all of these illegal aliens, which were moved, of course, mostly to the Democrat cities ultimately in order to support the blue voter rolls there, since the black voters are starting to change their mind about voting Democrat mindlessly. So they're buying a new voting bloc by using all of this money to prioritize spending for foreigners to persuade them to vote Democrat, for more government welfare, for more largesse, and yes, for communist socialism, which they supposedly came to America to escape, and now they want to destroy it in order to not work and get free food, free housing, free money, and live the American dream without the American work ethic or the American value system. So the Democrats are printing the money, spending it on aliens, ignoring America, allowing the crime, allowing the invasion, and of course they drove the affordability crisis themselves and are now yelling about the fact that Trump hasn't been able to bring prices back down. Well, I told you at the time, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, inflation never comes back all the way down. It just stops going up real fast, and some things come back a little bit, but it never goes back to the way it was. The money is printed, the price increases are baked in, you can't take them out. Wages went up to cover the increases. You can't lower the price without losing money as a business. But once the prices go up, you get a little bit of retraction as inflation wanes and better policy takes over and things recover, basically based on the price of energy. But once you drive it up, it doesn't come back. Trump can't put it back the way it was. You've devalued the currency by printing $1 trillion and increasing the wages. And you've decreased the purchasing power of American families, or the Democrats will, by raising taxes. Trump tried to increase the purchasing power by taking tax out of tips, out of overtime, and the states said, oh no, we're going to tax tips. So it's the Democrat states like Virginia that are taxing you and making the affordability crisis worse. Trump gave you back huge tax refunds. He lowered the price of oil and gasoline. Food has stabilized. But you actually have a strong economy right now, and the stock market shows you that. And it's being led by real earnings, which are being blown off the table by AI productivity. They were looking for some return on all the AI spending. Well, you just got it. You had a number of companies revenues off the table based on AI implementation within their operations. And it's only just beginning. It's only just beginning. So, I think I hear that first commercial break coming up. So we'll be back in 5 with more on this discussion. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour. Tell your friends, get informed, tune in. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is a Truth Attack Hour, and let's just get right back into this. As I was saying when the commercial break came up, the Democrats intentionally drove up the prices of things by intentionally driving up the price of energy, by intentionally driving up the price of gasoline and diesel in their insane quest to end the use of petroleum, which, of course, is absolutely insane. Your entire electrical grid is backed up with carbon-based fuel. The renewables need full-time backup to take over everything on the grid when it's not sunny or the wind isn't blowing. So they're just wasting money, duplicating capabilities that don't produce and turned out to be huge infrastructure boondoggles because all the solar fields and windmill farms were based on 30-year amortization programs, which turn out to be 15 years off. The equipment only lasts 15 years before you have to recapitalize the whole thing by replacing the infrastructure, the panels or the towers, the windmills. It only made money if they lasted 30 years. Those were the projections. When you cut the projection to 15 years, it's a permanent losing proposition that will need to be subsidized to stay operational forever. It will never produce cheap, clean energy. You want cheap, clean energy? Build nuclear power plants, small nuclear power plants that work in series, not triple reactors that work in parallel. So, the Democrat Party has gone insane. They're advocating for policies that they know will destroy the quality of life, break down individuals' ability to be productive and get ahead, and cause more and more people to swell to the ranks of socialism, calling for the government to distribute wealth equally so that everybody can have what the few that work hard already do. Everybody wants what they have without doing the work or taking the risks or putting up the capital or spending the years in school learning about it, how to do it, or the years in the field, in the office, or in the garage. No, they want it right away. They're entitled. No, nobody's entitled. Nobody's entitled to anything that somebody else does or produces. You're entitled to your own. But Democrats don't even want that. They want the government to take some huge chunk between what? 10 and 90%? So affordability. How do you get to the bottom line on affordability? Well, before I talk myself off the show without getting to the point, why don't we just terminate the income tax, President Trump? Huh? The whole thing's a fraud. It's all right there, taxfreedom.com. The Supreme Court terminated it. Tell the American people, no more withholding, claim exempt, no more returns. Keep your money, earn it, keep it. Put 10 to 40% back on your paycheck. That'll provide affordability. That's how you make up for the Democrats printing all the money and raising the price of goods 21.4%. You'll let the people keep the money they earn and afford the housing, the health care, the food, the services, which, by the way, all those illegal aliens are being subsidized, and you have to compete against their being subsidized for and prioritized. You want to know why housing's expensive? Because they gave it all to the illegal aliens. You want to know why there's no health care services? They are prioritizing illegal aliens, not the homeless, not the veterans, not the sick, not the black community. Foreigners. They're buying new votes. They're importing uneducated, unskilled, guaranteed to be dependent, non-English speaking blue voters that will vote forever for more government theft from the productive and more free distribution of income and wealth or earnings to those who don't work. or oppose the government. And literally, these far left extreme communists, and it is communism because that's what your youth have turned into. They're yelling socialism, it's actually communism. I've been through the planks of the Communist Manifesto, and we'll review some of that later, but this is what the public school system has given you, is not a population that has learned to independently critically think, that can do math, reading, writing, arithmetic, and history and geography. They've given you an indoctrinated with propaganda socialism. This is what the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto has done for you. What's the 10th plank? Government control of the public school system. They control the agenda and the curriculum, and they've given them the curriculum. Hate America, love communism, love socialism, take the property, let the government control it. New York City is the worst housing operator in the city. All their properties are ghettos. Half of them are uninhabitable. But Mamdani wants to take more for the city to control. You want to fix housing in New York? Fix the ghettos that the city has there without any residents, because they're uninhabitable, because they let them be destroyed. Because the city is the worst landlord in the city. Wake up! Wake up! And of course, the Democratic Party is now turned cannibal. The communist element is eating the moderate Democrats. They're winning in the elections, and they're not going to win in all the elections upcoming, but they're going to win in the blue cities where the kids and the poor have been indoctrinated, or the foreigners have been bought and registered to vote. And let's look at what's happening with this government assistance programs they're put in place under the trillion-dollar programs the Democrats voted in on us. First of all, they're not helping the people they're intended to help, like the homeless or the veterans. California has spent what, some $17 billion on the homeless, and there are more now than when they started? It's not helping the intended victims. It's creating armies of bureaucrats in the private sector. Many fraudulent, the NGOs, non-government organizations that are giving the money to implement the liberal Democrat programs with the money they printed. And those bureaucrats are stealing the money. They're over-reporting the services. They're under-reporting how much they're taking, which is most of it. It's half of it, more than half of it is fraud, just straight up fraud. They're stealing. The people running these programs, a lot of them foreign apparently from what we've seen, don't have the same values. They're taking advantage of these systems for daycare, health care, transportation. They're just stealing the money. All of the anywhere where the government is giving money to a private sector organization, supposedly nonprofit, NGO, non-government, in order to implement a government program, that money's being stolen. That's a fraud. Government should be delivering money directly to the intended victims, not working through middlemen that steal the money. The whole thing is a fraud. Child care, elder care, hospice care, transportation, it's all being plundered by fraudulent NGOs that are using the money to keep more Democrats in office as they kick back in contribution to the political campaigns that look the other way. While the fraud goes on to buy more votes for the Democrats. You want proof? Let's look at the health care bill, the Obamacare bill. You know what's happened since the Obamacare bill? Anybody got affordable insurance? Anybody out there got affordable insurance? How many people lost the insurance and their insurance provider that they had when Obamacare came in after being told you'd be able to keep your doctor and your policy? Oh, none of that was true. It was all a lie. Government took over health care. And then they did what? Oh, they didn't provide money to any victims. They gave it to the insurance companies, the NGOs. And you know what's happened since then? The insurance companies, the top 5 insurance companies, have made $400 billion in profit. Nearly $500 billion in profit. Not to provide health care, but to provide policies and then to say that's not covered. Or where's your copay? Oh, your premiums are late. We can't pay that. And your premiums went through the roof, and so did your copays, so that you're laying out nearly $30,000 before you see a dime from the insurance company. And they made $400 billion in profits. Healthcare reform turned out to be a program to deliver money to the insurance companies. And guess how they've been voting? Yeah, that's right. They've been lobbying and voting Democrat because they're passing out the money. And now they want more money to keep Obamacare going. That's their big deal. Healthcare, healthcare. Affordability. What about healthcare? You're letting it expire. You know, the fact that you have to keep subsidizing it should be an admission that the whole thing was a fraud up front. It was supposed to lower costs, not need to be subsidized forever. But nobody can afford it without the subsidies because it was a fraud. And it's just allowed the insurance companies to steal $500 billion in 12 years, 15 years. Just like all the Somalis stolen money in Minnesota and other places, defrauding the American welfare system, which is trying to help them, but they don't have American values, so anywhere there's an opportunity to steal, they do. And the government's made it pretty damn easy. You fill out a form, send it in, you start getting checks in the mail. Nobody checks anything. They're just passing out the money because they know it'll come back as a political contribution. And it will work towards setting up that communist state they want, which is where the young are gone with their politics, isn't it? They're not advocating for socialism. They're advocating for communism, abolition of private property. That's what's doing in New York. Income tax. That's the second plank. A graduated income tax. What do they want to do? They want to tax billionaires. That's right. Let's tax billionaires. The problem with taxing billionaires is they don't have the cash. They have stock. That's why they're worth $1 billion, is they have stock in their company. A lot of them don't even take pay to avoid income tax. They just live on the appreciation value of the stock of the company that they're managing and have created and own a lot of. Now, if you tax the billionaires, that would force every single billionaire to sell a large block of a stock, which would crash the stock market and cost millions of investors their 401ks and IRAs. That really what you want to do? Crash the stock market, forcing every billionaire to sell 5% every year? Really? That's insane. There are only 1,000 billionaires, but you'll crash every company in the stock market. You'll kill American investment. You won't tax the billionaires. You'll destroy the stock markets and trillions of dollars held by the middle class and regular Americans. And pensions and IRAs and 401ks, just wipe it all out. Absolute insanity. You want an idea? I'll give you an idea. Instead of taxing billionaires, why don't we tax attorneys? They think the income tax is on everybody. Let's tax attorneys, not billionaires. They're doing nothing but pushing pens and ink, ignoring the law, violating it, arguing you have to pay, you're a slave. Let's see how long it takes them to figure out the 16th Amendment doesn't authorize jack when they're the targets of the tax. Let's tax their license on an excise basis. Now they can't escape it. Gee, I guess since all the people in Congress are attorneys, they're probably not going to do that. But that's what we should do, not tax the billionaires who are producing and creating. Tax the attorneys doing nothing but pushing paper and manipulating the law. 50%. Tax everything the attorneys make. You want to tax a group? There's over 1.5 million attorneys. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and let's just get right back into this. As I was saying, as the commercial break came up, there are only 1,000 billionaires in America. There are 1.5 million attorneys. If you tax the billionaires, you'll crash the stock market because they don't have $1 billion in the bank. They got a few 100,000. Believe it. It's all in stock equity. That's how they get to $1 billion. They don't keep a lot of cash around. They know the cash is worthless. It's fiat notes. You use cash around to function. You keep your money deployed in assets that are working, and for them, it's their own company. That's why they own all the stock. They haven't sold it. They don't need to. They don't want to. They want to build a company that they own and control. You sell the stock, you lose control. Somebody else comes in and screws it all up, taking money out instead of building productivity in. So, you can't tax the billionaires without killing everybody's future. Because those stocks lead the market. So, you tax the attorneys. 1.5 million attorneys doing nothing but pushing paper, manipulating the law, and living like kings. You want to tax somebody? Tax them. Tax the non-productive, the paper pushers. Let's see how long it takes them to figure out they're not subject to the tax constitutionally once it's aimed at them. And then you can make it stick by taxing their license on an excise basis. Nobody else is subject, just those with law licenses. How many will leave the industry, and we'll get down to a number of what we actually need? And of course, if you want to provide affordability to America, you terminate the income tax in its entirety, Mr. Trump, President Trump. The Supreme Court laid the ground in Moore v. United States, 602 U.S. 572, 2024. It's right here at taxfreedom.com. There's no direct taxation in the U.S. There's no direct taxation of the citizens. There's no unlimited taxation of citizens. There's no graduated taxation of citizens. There's no territorial jurisdiction for the federal government to tax in the 50 states outside of specific activities and transactions, subject to impost, duty, and excise taxation, indirect taxation by impost, duty, and excise. No territorial authority to tax any other form, not labor, not rent, not interest, not dividends, not alimony, not commissions, not compensation, nothing. Unless it's earned by a foreign person. No constitutional authority, no territorial authority, no legislative authority. There's no constitutional authority given to Congress to write law to enforce a direct tax against any party except the several states. You can't tax labor because you worked. There's no impost, duty, or excise involved. Impost taxes foreign imports and foreign persons and in foreign places. Duties tax exported goods. That's why we have duty-free shops at the international airports. And excises tax the manufacture, consumption, and sale of commodities within the country, things like alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. It taxes licenses to pursue certain occupations like alcohol, tobacco, and firearm. And it taxes the corporate privilege, where it is the privilege of incorporation or licensing that is the subject of the tax, not the mere earning of money or having income. There's no legislative prerogative to tax you on the basis of earning money, only impost, duty, and excise. There's no territorial basis. There is no constitutional basis for graduated taxation. Under the Constitution, taxation to citizens must be uniform. It's the Communist Manifesto in its second plank that calls for, quote unquote, a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. There's where you find the taxation of income, i.e. labor, is the Communist Manifesto. There's where you find the graduated class taxation of citizens. The Constitution prohibits it. It says uniformity. There's no constitutional authority to enforce a direct tax on labor under the 16th Amendment if you can dysfunctionally imagine that such a power was created. Even if it was intended to be created, it wasn't fully formed and authorized for lack of the enabling enforcement clause. The only taxing powers that the government is allowed to enforce against the American people is the impost, the duty, and the excise. Nothing else is constitutionally authorized for enforcement. All of the income tax enforcement since World War II has been a constitutional fraud perpetrated by corrupt liberal judges enforcing quasi-socialism under the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. It's been a perverse and subverted judiciary for 50 years, and the Supreme Court allowed it to happen. Supreme Court allowed it to happen. So, capitalism versus socialism is the real issue, and part of the problem is we don't have a capitalist system. You're living under a quasi-socialist system. Like I said, income tax is the second plank of the Communist Manifesto. We have it. A Federal Reserve Bank with a monopoly on capital and credit is the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto. We have it. The public government control of the public schools and their curriculum is the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto. We have it. You don't have a capitalist system, you have a quasi-socialist system, and what's failing is not capitalism, but the quasi-socialist system that the liberals have snuck in the back door and the courts have allowed to exist since basically the Depression, and it has gradually eaten away at American values and quality of life by undermining the value of the currency, which is down to about 1% of its original value. A dollar today buys what a penny bought in 1913, maybe less. So we don't have the capitalist system, and a restoration of it, being able to keep your paycheck, private labor, private earnings. Federal government operates between the states, not in them, and around the states with dealing with foreign countries. So give the people back their paychecks. Claim exempt. Stop filing. You don't owe any tax. It's your money. You want affordability? Keep your paycheck. That's the path to affordability. And a restoration of constitutional system of taxation. Like I say, we're already practicing planks 1, 2, 5, and 10. Or at least that's what New York wants to do, is start practicing plank 1, which is the abolition of private property and the application of all rents to public purposes. Let's look at what Mom Dummy wants to do with that, right? You've taken over the million units with rent control so that the state can what? Have another million units that are turned into ghettos, uninhabitable properties like all the other city properties the city is the landlord and tenant manager for? Yeah, and they're also talking about grocery stores, right? How he wants to start. First, it was one grocery store for $30 million. Now it's 5 for 70. So he managed to bring the price down. At least it's not 150. Yeah, but here's how it goes. This is a typical liberal socialist program, and I'm going to explain to you now how it's going to go. They want $70 million for 5 stores. But if you talk to the operators of stores that are already there in New York, they'll tell you that they would only need $3 million to open a new store in New York. And that's when they have to pay the rent and the fees and the licenses and aren't being subsidized. They could build a store for $3 million. So when Dami tells you he wants, what was it, $30 million to build 1, $70 million to build 5, here's how it's going to go in reality. Whoever gets selected to build the stores is going to spend not $3 million a store, but $6 million. They're going to pay twice as much as they should. $6 million for 5 stores, $30 million. And $40 million is going to be stolen by the Muslim Democrat contract winners that get the money to build the stores. And $10 million of that is going to be kicked back to Democrat elections. That's what's going to happen. They're going to spend $6 million per store instead of 3, $30 million for 5, and they're going to steal $40 million. It's a kickback scheme. He puts 5 times as much money as should be there. It should be 15 million, maybe 16, so they make one. 3 million times 5, 15 million. Isn't there a discount on volume? Probably, but not here. So instead of 15 million, it's 70. And they're going to spend 30 on the stores, overpay everyone to create those liberal Democrat kickbacks all the way down to the ground floor of the labor unions. And 40 million is going to be stolen by the contract operators, the bureaucracy, and it's going to be kicked back as political contributions to those that gave them the ridiculous $70 million in contracts for $3 million, $15 million in building. That's how it works. They're stealing the money. This is a wide open plan for Mamdani to steal the money, and I'll bet you it's Muslim contractors that get the bids. How much do you want to bet? How much you want to bet? Half of them have never built a thing in their life, but they're still going to win the contract. How much you want to bet? How much do you want to bet? Go ahead, put it in the comments on my YouTube channel when I post this. Go ahead, let me know. How much do you want to bet? So that's what's going on. That's what's going on in Minnesota with the Leering centers and the hospice care. It's what's going on in California and all the Medicare fraud. It's what's going on in Florida and all the overbilling for the elderly in that state. Medicare, Medicaid. And most of it is being perpetrated by foreigners taking advantage of the U.S. program. It's not really in the U.S. value and the U.S. mind to set this enterprise up and steal. We know the consequences. Now, foreigners just leave. There are no consequences. You got to catch them before they ditch. Go ahead, go find her in Somalia. Good luck. So, this capitalism versus socialism, that's the choice in the midterms. And if you vote the Democrats back into office, they're going to raise the price of energy, raise the price of gas, restore all of their insane policies, and spend the next 2 years trying to impeach Donald Trump, which will be impossible because they won't have the votes in the Senate. But they won't care. They'll waste all their time doing that, or voting to give money to foreigners and open the border, which, of course, will be bills Donald Trump will veto. They'll rewrite the budget through reconciliation bills, which the Republicans, for some reason, don't seem to be able to do. They're dropping the ball. They're leaving town here now at the end of the week without passing the SAVE Act to try and get voter ID in place for voting, without passing the Clarity Act, which provide some foundation for crypto development here in the U.S. They ain't pass a budget. In fact, they're threatening to close the government again when that comes up. That's the Democrats' policy. Close the government if we're not in charge. No funding for anything. And then blame Trump for the lack of money to fund the food stamp program, or the housing, or the health care, or the government. Close everything down and blame the Republicans, who are dropping the ball by not being more vocal about the drill, baby drill, the strong economy, the strong market, and the fact of what will happen if the Democrats back in power when they reverse all of these good policies and replace them with their insanity, which is communism. Government takes over and starts destroying everything because government doesn't know how to produce anything except paperwork and bureaucrats. Okay, I think I hear the end of the show coming up. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour. I'll be back next week with more on more and other topics.